Getting sick sucks. How do some people never get sick? And how come certain people always get sick? Well, luckily, there's some very simple and specific ways that you can prevent yourself from getting sick. So today I'm going to go over 9 simple things that you can start doing to prevent getting sick. Now, number 1 is going to be breathing through your nose. Surprisingly, mouth breathers are way more likely to get sick than people who are regular nose breathers. And the reason is when you breathe through your mouth, you're not going to be filtering out any of that air that gets into your lungs. When you breathe through your mouth, that air is very cold, it's very dry, and it can cause a lot of inflammation in your lungs. Also, when you're breathing through your mouth, you're going to be taking these shorter, shallower breaths. And over time, this can stress you out. Think about the next time that you get stressed out. What's happening to your breathing? Your breathing is probably going to get faster and shorter. That's exactly what people who always breathe through their mouth are doing, except they're doing it all the time. Now, sometimes a little bit of stress can be good, especially when you're trying to prevent getting sick. We're going to get into that in just a little bit, so make sure you stick around. But instead of breathing through your mouth, now instead if you breathe through your nose, you're going to be filtering out a lot more air before it reaches your lungs. Your nose will filter out different dust and particles, and it'll also filter out about 98 to 99% of viruses and bacteria before it enters your lungs. And also your nose will temper and humidify that air before it enters your lungs. So that means that air is going to be a lot more gentle on your lungs and prevent those lungs from getting inflamed. Another cool thing you get when you breathe through your nose is this air travels through your paranasal sinuses. Now, these paranasal sinuses produce nitric oxide when air passes through them. Nitric oxide is a very cool molecule because it's an antibacterial and it's also a vasodilator. So not only can it help dilate our blood vessels and keep our blood pressure low and keep our heart healthy, it's also going to prevent us from getting sick because it can fight off bacteria and infections. Specifically, this nitric oxide is going to prevent things like throat infections or tonsil infections and adenoid infections. Now, what do you do if your nose is clogged and you cannot breathe through your nose? Well, luckily, there is a nose unblocking exercise that you can do to help you breathe through your nose. So what you're going to do is first do a normal inhale and exhale. And then after the exhale, you're going to hold your breath and you're going to bob your head back and forth while holding your breath until you have this medium to strong urge to breathe. So it's going to look kind of like this. After you have that strong urge to breathe, you're going to recover by breathing through your nose again for 1 minute, and then you're going to do that again for a total of 6 sets. Now, if you don't want to bob your head, you can also do this by just walking, like going on a track or going for a walk and walking as many steps as you can while holding your breath until you have that strong urge to breathe. Now, the key here is to not hold your breath too long. You don't want to hold it until you're dying to take the next breath, because then you've held it too long. The reason that this exercise works is, 1, you're increasing the circulation and the blood flow throughout your nose and your head area. And also, when you're holding your breath, you're also producing a molecule called CO2, or carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide is also a vasodilator, meaning it'll dilate your blood vessels. And when your body senses that you have more of this CO2 building up, it's going to tell your nose to stop producing as much mucus. So after those 6 sets, you're going to have less mucus in your nose and your sinus area. Now, the other key here is make sure you only use your nose to breathe after you do the exercise. Because if you start going back to mouth breathing, then your nose is going to clog up again. And if you are actually sick and you're trying to do this exercise, then you're probably going to have to do it multiple times throughout the day. And I actually went into more detail on how to properly unblock your nose. So if you want to learn more about that, I'm putting a link in the description below, so make sure you check that out. Number 2 is to have more stress. Well, sometimes. People always say to have less stress and too much stress is bad. But what about having more stress? We know that long-term chronic stress cannot be good, but researchers found something interesting regarding short-term stress. Now, one way to control your stress is through your breathing, because your breathing can either be manual, where you focus on it, or it can just happen in the background where you don't even think about it and it's still going on. So this study was seeing if you manipulate people's stress levels temporarily by focusing on their breathing, if it can prevent them from getting sick. So what the study did was it took these participants and it IV administered E. coli into their bodies. Now, E. coli is supposed to get you very sick. I mean, Chipotle has been famous for this multiple times, where they had to shut down because of an E. coli outbreak. Now, one of the groups was trained in different techniques, like meditation techniques and breathing techniques and things like cold immersion, like cold plunges. And the other group was a control group. So they had no sort of training. They just injected them with E. coli and said, let's see what happens. And what they found is, in the group that had the training, after they injected them with the E. coli, they had way more epinephrine and way more cytokine IL-10, which is an anti-inflammatory mediator. Now, these are the things that you want in your body when you're getting sick. Now, let's move on to the important stuff. The group that had the training, they just didn't get sick. They had way less flu-like symptoms compared with the control group. Now, you might be thinking like, well, it could have been some of the other training measures that those groups were doing, but the study said, and I quote, "It appears that mainly the breathing techniques used by the trained individuals account for the increase in epinephrine and subsequent attenuation of the inflammatory response." So in other words, the breathing was really the only thing that made a difference. So what is this magic breathing that they were doing so that they didn't get sick? Well, it's basically any type of breathing to activate your sympathetic nervous system, or the stress response in your body. And there's a lot of different names for this specific breathing style, like the Tumo style breathing or Wim Hof breathing. And Wim Hof is a guy that got famous for this type of breathing technique. And actually, Wim Hof was one of the people that trained the people in this study. So the breathing technique that they did in this study was they would basically hyperventilate for about 30 breaths, and then after those 30 breaths, they would hold their breath for about 2 to 3 minutes. So this would be a very good way to prevent you from getting sick if you feel like you're coming down with something. The way I do this is, if I ever feel like I'm gonna come down with something, I do 25 of these massive inhale and exhales, and then after the exhale, I hold my breath for about a minute or as long as I can. So it'll look kind of like this. And then after I'm done, after the last exhale, I'll hold my breath. And then after you're done, for the rest of the day, make sure you focus on only using your nose to breathe, like we talked about before. Now this brings us to number 3, which is to have less stress overall. There are multiple studies, including this one here, that shows that long-term stress is simply bad. And this study even said that short-term stress can enhance the acquisition and or expression of immunoprotective or immunopathological responses, kind of like what we talked about before, how short-term stress can be good. But in contrast, chronic stress can suppress protective immune responses and or exacerbate pathological immune response. And here's the thing with stress. Stress is meant to be something that's short-lived. It's not meant to be chronic. Stress is meant to be a tool for survival. That's why people call it fight or flight. But here's the thing. When you are stressed out constantly throughout the day, those same responses in your body are happening as if you were going to fight a tiger or a lion. For example, like when you're stuck in traffic and you have a road rage incident. That stress response that you're having in that moment is not justified for the thing that you're doing. If instead that you're a Navy SEAL and you're about to go in a battle or something, then yeah, you need to have that stress response. But if you're just driving to work, you don't need that stress response. So having some sort of stress relief throughout the week to help keep you calm is very important. Now, number 4 is to sleep more. Researchers found that you are more likely to get sick if you are sleep deprived. So in this study, 23 healthy males were being studied. And all they did in this study was sleep deprive them for just one night. Just one night. Instead of waking them up at 7 a.m., they woke them up at 3 a.m. Kind of like if you have a really early flight to catch and you have to wake up super early to catch it so you can go enjoy Cancun, this is what happens to your immune system. They found that in 18 out of 23 of the people, their immune system function went down to 72% of what it normally does. Now that was just after one night. Imagine being chronically sleep deprived, like a lot of people are. Studies are showing that in all of the developed countries throughout the world, 2/3 of people are not sleeping the recommended amount of sleep every night. They're actually sleep deprived. So if 2/3 of people out of all these countries are not getting enough sleep, you can see why so many people are having a hard time staying healthy and not getting sick. So make sure you prioritize your sleep. Make sure you get those 8 hours and focus on getting quality sleep. If you want to learn more about how to improve your sleep quality, I actually talk more about that in some of my other videos, so putting a link in the description below, so make sure you check those out too. Number 5 is to wash your hands. Come on, man. You just went to the bathroom. Please wash your hands. Training people in hand washing has been shown to significantly reduce the amount of colds children get when they're 2 years or younger. This study was also looking at children between the ages of 3 to 5 and also their teachers. And it was comparing people over the course of 21 weeks. Either people were getting hand washing training. I know it's not that complicated, but they were getting trained on how to properly wash their hands and the importance of washing their hands. And the other group had no training. During the peak flu season, they looked at them and they found that the test group, the group that had the training in the hand washing and learned about germs and stuff like that, they had significantly fewer colds than the control group. And this is one of the most simple things you can start doing. Just washing your hands. If you touch your toilet seat, it's probably not going to be clean. Also, if you are getting on a plane or something and you're about to order your snacks because you're fancy and you fly Delta, then you should probably wash your hands before you eat. Or even if you're going out to eat somewhere, like at a restaurant, make sure you take the time to wash your hands before you start eating. Number 6, eat more honey. This randomized controlled trial in the American Academy of Pediatrics was comparing 3 different types of honey versus a placebo. So they took 300 different children with an upper respiratory infection. And the kids were either given 10 grams of a different type of honey before going to sleep, or 10 grams of this placebo that didn't do anything. What they found is all 3 of the honey groups significantly improved those children's symptoms versus the placebo. Specifically, their coughs got better, they had less coughs overall, and their sleep also got better, which can further help you get better. So what is it about honey that can help prevent you from getting sick? Well, this other article published in the International Journal of Microbiology might be able to help. They found that honey has broad-spectrum antibacterial properties against gram-positive and negative bacteria, including antibiotic resistance ones like MRSA. So honey is basically a natural antibiotic. So next time you're drinking tea or something, don't put sugar in there, try putting some honey in there. Number 7 is to exercise. Exercising can actually enhance your body's ability to fight off infections. But the trick here is to exercise correctly, because there are some specific things you're doing when you're exercising that prevent you from getting sick, but also, if you do things a little wrong, then it might actually increase your likelihood of getting sick. When it comes to prevent you from getting sick, this review in the Journal of Sport and Health Science found that moderate intensity exercise is the best. And actually, they found that high intensity exercise without having enough rest in between can actually increase your likelihood of getting sick. So if you're just an average person who sits on the couch all day, then moderate intensity exercise for you can help you not only in getting in shape, but also getting healthier and not getting sick. So what exactly is moderate intensity exercise? That's something called Zone 2 training. Now, I go more into exercises for longevity and to help you live longer and healthier, and specifically talk about Zone 2 training as well in a different video, and I'm putting a link in the description below if you want to learn more about that. But Zone 2 training is basically something where you can maintain for a long period of time, but it's a little uncomfortable. Another way to think about Zone 2 training is you're exercising at an intensity where you can maintain a full conversation with someone, but again, that conversation is an uncomfortable one. So for example, let's say I'm going for a walk in the park and I'm really easily having a conversation on the phone, like I don't even notice that I'm walking. That would be Zone 1. Now let's say I am running in the park and I can't even have a conversation with someone because I have to focus on my run. That will be entering Zone 3. Now if we take it a step back and I take a light jog in the park and I'm heavily breathing, but I'm still maintaining a full conversation with someone, that would be Zone 2. That type of training is that moderate intensity sweet spot that can help prevent you from getting sick. And also, like in the other video where I talk about in the description below, it can help you live longer. Number 8, less alcohol, more water. So why is alcohol bad if you don't want to get sick? Well, alcohol makes you cold. I know you might feel warm when you're drinking, but actually the opposite is happening in your body. This study found that alcohol influences the thermoregulation in your body and drops your core body temperature. On top of that, since drinking alcohol makes you feel warm, you're more likely to do dumb things that involve getting cold. For example, like running outside naked when it's freezing outside because you feel like you can take on the world. All those activities will also make your body even colder. And this in turn hurts your immune system, especially when you're already sick and trying to fight off an infection. So avoid the alcohol, especially when you're already feeling like you're gonna get sick. Instead, you wanna focus on drinking more water, especially again when you feel like you're gonna get sick, because your body needs water for your immune system to function properly. And when you get sick or you're getting sick, then your immune system needs that water even more. That's why they say when you're getting sick, make sure you drink a lot of fluids. Number 9, stop taking antibiotics. Now, I'm not saying if your doctor prescribes you antibiotics and you have to take them, to not take them. But I'm saying stop seeking out antibiotics to solve everything. There is not a week that goes by when someone comes to my office and they ask me for antibiotics. And I try to see what's going on, and I'm like, dude, you have no sign of any infection. Why do you need antibiotics? Or the worst is when people try to take antibiotics when they have a cold. A cold happens because of a virus, and antibiotics only target bacteria. So taking an antibiotic will not help. Now, the other thing to note here is antibiotics are basically a nuke that goes off in your body and in your gut that targets all types of bacteria. That means it also targets good bacteria that live in your body. And the other problem with antibiotics is if you take them too much, you risk getting something called antibiotic resistance. When you take antibiotics, not all the bacteria will die. Eventually, some of the stronger ones that survived will live on. And if you keep taking that same antibiotics, you're gonna get more and more of those strong bacteria that stay alive. Then when you actually need to take that antibiotic, the antibiotic might not work so well because you have so many antibiotic resistant bacteria. This is a real problem, and a lot of people are over-prescribing antibiotics, and now there's a lot of initiative to cut back on prescribing antibiotics because we're seeing the problems that it can cause. So I hope you guys like these tips. Try them, let me know what you think, and let me know if you don't get sick. Whatever the reason that you are intermittent fasting, there are some things that you could be doing wrong that could be killing your results. So today I'm gonna go over the top 5 mistakes that people make when they are intermittent fasting. And number 1 is overindulging, specifically on the wrong foods. Now, one of the biggest reasons that